A day to remember for the rest of your lives.
There's a great promise for all of you.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame and Extreme Networks present the Heart of a Hall of Famer program. With nearly 100 Hall of Famers participating, we have reached 48 states around this country, sharing the message that football is more than a game and can teach Americans how to huddle up during a time when we need to be united.
It's time for America to take a real deep dive. Not at no one else, but at yourself individually. If you want to change America, don't brush your teeth with your head down. Look at who you are and be the example. Be the example.
An opportunity to meet and learn from one of the greatest football players of all time. But more than that, the chance to see that their Hall of Fame life wasn't given to them. Single-parent homes, drug-infested neighborhoods, and poverty.
I grew up in a neighborhood that was considered one of the worst in America, and the household I grew up in was one of the worst in that neighborhood. By the time I was 20 years old, I knew at least 30 friends or family members who had lost their lives. Football became like a second parent to me. It taught me the things that my father wasn't there to teach me, and that my mother, as a struggling, single-parent woman, just didn't know to teach me.
But they learn how to live a life of character before pursuing their football careers. Today, you will learn you can do the same that they once did. Making good decisions can lead to a prosperous life both on and off the field. Your game for life has already begun. It's your decision whether or not you want to be a successful student, son, daughter, brother, or sister.
Every one of you can have a Hall of Fame life, whether or not you play football. You can be as great as you want to be. The Hall of Fame is all about integrity, character, and excellence. You have the opportunity to represent yourself that way. You determine your character.
Welcome to a once-in-a-lifetime program, The Heart of a Hall of Famer.
The mission of the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game. To preserve its history. To promote its values.
You're teaching kids at the basic core how to love each other.
And to celebrate excellence everywhere.
He arrived at the Hall in 2014 as the 6th president in its 53 years. His heart, his passion, and his love of the game are legendary.
All right, and with that, I'd like to welcome you to another special edition of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer series, powered by Extreme Networks. Our first ever Hall of Fame staff edition featuring my boss, President and CEO, Mr. David Baker. And before we turn things over to him, let me first introduce myself, as some of you may know. My name is Jake Ray. I'm the Youth and Education Manager at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And I'm not in the comfy confines of the office today. I'm coming to you live again from my dining room. Got to add a few little additions to spruce up the background a little bit here today. But I'm happy to be joined by Mr. Baker today, and we'll hear from him in a few minutes. But before we get started, I want to just talk a little bit about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our mission at the Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And those values we speak on are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, all of which had an impact in all of our Hall of Famers' lives, but as well as Mr. Baker's. And you'll see how those values played a role in not only all of his entire career, but especially since he's been with us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Before we get started, we'd like to send out a few thank yous. First off, like we mentioned, I'd like to thank our great partners at Extreme Networks. They do a lot of great work for us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We love working with them. They do a lot of great work for us, not only in Canton, Ohio, but throughout the country as well with this program. They do a lot of great work for schools as well. So we want to thank you for all the hard work they're putting in with this program. And then secondly, I'd like to thank those students who are tuning in today. I know it's a weird time. I know a lot of you aren't going to go back to school this year. So we want to provide you with a different way to learn. Provide you not only to learn about the history of this great game of football, but the values that impact it and the values that impact our Hall of Famers, as well as us as staff at all of our lives. So without further ado, I'd like to turn things over for some opening remarks to the president and CEO of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Mr. Baker.
Hey, Jake, thanks so much. It's great to see what you do, and it's great to see that you've got such a cool kitchen. You got a great setup there, Jake. I, too, want to thank you, our education team at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and especially Extreme Networks, for what they do in partnering with us to get these values out to so many kids, to let them know that they may not have a bronze bust at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, a place we call the most inspiring place on earth, but they can have a Hall of Fame life and what it takes to do that. And, I also want to apologize because I'm not a Hall of Famer. We have right now 326 bronze busts in Canton, Ohio. We have 177 living Hall of Famers. We're about to add 20 more bronze busts and another 12 Hall of Famers. But that would be added to this enshrinement this year. But while I'm not a Hall of Famer, I think those of us who work at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, like myself and Jake and so many others, I tell you, we've seen what it takes to be a Hall of Famer. We measure greatness. We calibrate excellence. And we understand how these guys fought to be great. They did not fall out of bed great. God just didn't make them great like we all think they are when we see them on the field doing spectacular things. Each one of them overcame some adversity, as you heard in the introduction there. Each one of them fought to be great. And greatness in our business isn't a clean suit and pristine perfectness. One of our Hall of Famers, Vince Lombardi, said that you can never achieve perfection, but if you chase perfection, you might just capture excellence. Excellence in our business is snot coming out of your nose and blood coming out of your mouth and a dirty, filthy uniform because you fought to be great. You overcame adversity. You failed and you didn't let that stop you. You got up when you got knocked down. And in the process, you were so committed and you were so driven to that purpose and that mission that you drug a whole lot of other people with you to a place of excellence. And that's what we've seen in all of our Hall of Famers. And you don't have to be a football player to be a Hall of Famer. You can be a Hall of Fame dad, Hall of Fame mom, a Hall of Fame staff member at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or in whatever you choose to do. But it's all about fighting to be great and the process to be excellent. So I think in some respects, I'm certainly not qualified to be here as a Hall of Famer, but I think those of us who've seen them so closely and get to know them are supremely qualified to talk about their attributes and what they do to really be excellence that can help us be better people in everyday life.
So, before we dive into, we talk about those values, like you said, not a lot of people know who David Baker is. So we're going to go through some rapid fire questions here, just, kind of introduce yourself and see who, the person David Baker is. So this is going to be a list, of some rapid fire questions. So first one, your favorite NFL team.
Well, I'm not supposed to have a favorite NFL team because I get to represent the game, and the game is all those teams. I'd suppose that you'd have to, if I did have to choose, it would be the Atlanta Falcons. My son, Sam, played for 7 years for the Falcons, almost 8. And it was a great organization, and their owner, Arthur Blank, and Mike Smith, their head coach there when he was there, Tom Dimitroff, the general manager, everybody was wonderful to him, kind of as a young man. I think he not only became a better football player, but he became a better man by being with the Atlanta Falcons. So I owe them a great debt. But I'll tell you, I've come to know every owner, every organization. I've been in every stadium, and I think they're all incredible people.
All right, next one, your favorite player growing up.
You know, that is probably a pretty easy one. Roman Gabriel was important to me as a Los Angeles Ram fan because those are the games that I got. But there is no doubt in my mind that the guy who I revered the most, respected the most, loved the most was quarterback Bart Starr with the Green Bay Packers. He was such a good man and such a good leader and so tough with a championship team. While this is not rapid fire, Jake, let me say that the day I got to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think that was January 6th of 2014. Within 15 minutes, I got a call, and they said Bart Starr is on the line. And my first call that I received to the Pro Football Hall of Fame was Bart Starr. And he and his wife, Sherry, you know, his son, Bart Jr., they're just great people. And as God would have it, I actually ended up speaking at his funeral and his memorial when he passed. So without a doubt, Bart Starr is the guy. But you know, I've come to respect every guy that we work with.
Do you have a favorite athlete outside of football that you either looked up to or were a fan of?
You know, there's a lot of them. I mean, there's just a lot of them. I kind of came from a basketball background, so you know, I always liked the way Bill Walton played. But I would have to say Michael Jordan. You know, maybe I'm impacted by The Last Dance, but he was such poetry and motion and perseverance, and never seemed to complain despite getting so beat up. But there's a lot of them, so it's hard for me to pick one. But if I had to pick one, it'd probably be MJ.
Definitely, I'm learning a lot about
Magic.
MJ.
I gotta say Magic Johnson too.
Magic, yeah.
I love Magic smile.
You mentioned you've been in every NFL stadium. Do you have a favorite one? And this stadium doesn't have to be around today. Do you have a favorite stadium you've ever been in?
Well, yeah, I think the easy answer is Lambeau Field because of the nature of it, that this is a team that's owned by the fans. But boy, there's a lot of them. I think each one has their characteristic to it. Obviously, AT&T has been the palace. There's a couple of incredible stadiums coming online this year with the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, and then you know, the stadium in Las Vegas as well. But gosh, Minnesota, you know, the Bank of America Stadium, the you know, the beautiful new Mercedes Stadium, and the Superdome. Everyone is special, and not just because of the architecture, frankly, because of the fans.
Mm-hmm. All right, next one. And this is a hard one because there's literally millions of answers you could choose. But in your time at the Hall of Fame, is there an artifact that stands out to you as maybe your favorite one?
Well, you know, actually, there are millions of them. You're right, Jake, and there's a ton of them. And people don't understand that only 5% of what we show in the museum is what we have. You know, the rest of it kind of goes down floors beneath and in the archives and all kinds of stuff. But it is a little bit of an easy answer for me because, you know, we get the Lombardi Trophy a year before it's actually presented at the Super Bowl. And that is in our profession, the ultimate, you know, kind of, you know, icon for excellence. But there's lots of other stuff. I always love the ball warmer that Paul Brown created. It was actually kind of this pineapple that was like a toaster that warmed the ball on cold days. And, I don't think he got in as much trouble as that as Tom Brady did for Deflategate. But, you know, there's so many things, but I think I would have to say the Lombardi Trophy is the ultimate symbol of what this game is all about.
That's not a bad answer at all. You know, one of the cool things about, you know, the careers that you and I have is, you know, not only do we get to meet the greatest football minds and athletes of all time, you know, we get to see some people from outside the game, you know, some non-Hall of Fame players. So do you have a favorite non-Hall of Famer or non-football player, celebrity even, that you've gotten to interact with in your time at the Hall of Fame?
In my time at the Hall or before that?
Well, you know what? We'll say in your entire life, non-athlete, your favorite non-athlete.
Well, it's interesting because there's that old adage of if you could have your dinner with three people, who would it be?
Hmm.
And for me, if I stayed away from divine figures like Jesus Christ, it would probably be Walt Disney, Billy Graham, and I always said Tony Dungy because I have such great respect for him. But I think I've had the privilege of knowing so many Finns here who are famous folks, who are entertainers and really good people at the same time. I probably had the opportunity to meet 6 or 7 presidents. Ronald Reagan was always an important one for me because I think he had his compassionate conservatism as a philosophy, but he motivated people because of how much he cared. And I always thought that was very, very impressive. Not to be partisan, Republican or Democrat. The great thing about the Pro Football Hall of Fame is that when you're on the field and you're competing, it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, or whether you're a Baptist or a Buddhist or a Jew or an agnostic. What matters is those values. Those values relate to everybody. But we've had the opportunity, and certainly there's a lot of people who love football, and a lot of them are famous.
So this is the last one, and this might be for our small Hall of Fame family to find out. But you've been on TV, you've been able presenting all these prestigious awards. One that sticks out to me. You were down there when Drew Brees broke the career passing record or career touchdown record, one of those two, and you got that football. You were on TV. What is your favorite suit?
That's a good question. I appreciate it. I wear a couple colorful suits for the students that might be listening out there because, when you got a body that's this big, it's, some people think that my tailor makes my suits out of a old car cover for a Volkswagen. But, for me, it's not that's just a way to dress. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, we have a lapel pin that says Pro Football Hall of Fame, Canton, Ohio. That's my favorite thing, to have that on, have the privilege of representing the Pro Football Hall of Fame, of representing staff members like yourself who believe in that mission to honor the great heroes of the game, to preserve its history, promote its values, and celebrate excellence everywhere. To have the opportunity to represent the Gold Jackets and to be a guardian of the game. Every time I put that pin on, that is a real special moment, no matter what suit I have. So I appreciate it, Jake.
That's a pretty good answer. I'll take that answer for sure. At the beginning, you mentioned those values, and you've mentioned them a couple times. We're at a time in society, in this entire world right now, that's we really need to lean on those values. With everything going on today in the world with the COVID, the coronavirus, the pandemic. How do those values play an important role in everybody's life today?
Yeah, that's a great question right now because I think we're at an uncertain time in our history, and we don't know what the future holds. And that's what happens in a ball game. You don't know what that next play is going to be about, and if you're in the first quarter, you don't know what the third quarter is going to be. But you do know how to approach the next play. You know about how to be a teammate to other people. You know how to persevere and just keep focused, how to make adjustments when you go forward. And I think commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence, those are the values that we focus on here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But there's all kinds of other values that fit into those. Discipline, diligence, forgiveness, even love. And right now, I think a lot of people are going to emerge from these stay-at-home orders, and all of a sudden, I think family is going to be more important than it used to be because we spent so much time with our family, and we want to care for them. I think faith is going to be more important than it used to be, and I think these values that we've learned about how to persevere and how to continue and how to care about someone else. The great thing about the game is that when you're in that huddle, you are shoulder to shoulder with everyone who has the same goal. And as we kind of move from this, We need to maintain physical distancing. We need to maintain the hygiene. We need to wear masks when necessary. But part of that is caring about the other person, not just caring about yourself. And I think that as we come out of this, there's even going to be a greater need to focus on the economy because of so many people who've lost their jobs, and get business going so that people can get hired again. And that is caring about somebody else. So I think it has everything to do with it. Um, the great Martin Luther King, Reverend Martin Luther King, said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in comfort and convenience, but where he stands in challenge and controversy. And I think there's a lot of challenge and a lot of controversy ahead of us. And that's going to determine who we are. Our character as a nation, our character as a community, and our character as individuals.
Now, how do you see the game of football or sports in general, kind of being that factor that brings everybody back together? When everything's said and done and we're starting to get back to normal life again, how is sports and football going to play a role in that?
Well, some people think sports is entertainment and it's a diversion, but I think a lot of people think of it as really as a place to see those values in action in a very ecumenical way. Like I said, it's not about partisanship. It's not about religion. It's if you love football, you can understand courage. In that old picture of Y.A. Tittle, kneeling on the field after a game, having given it his all, or Kellen Winslow. You can understand, integrity of guys, how hard they work, or commitment, or respect for each other. I think that in my own experience, Jake, I come from a family where neither my mom nor my dad could read or write. And they were really good people. I've never seen anybody that loved anyone more than my mom, and I never, saw anybody work harder than my dad. But they didn't have the opportunity to get an education like you and I did, and they weren't as sophisticated as some other people. But I'll tell you, that work ethic, that love, it made them Hall of Famers to me. But for me in my life, I'll tell you, I was afforded that education. I had the opportunity to go to law school. I had the opportunity to be in a library and walk with great masters like, Shakespeare or Thoreau or, Kipling, and learn from them because of the education I had. But I will also tell you that sometimes in school, you don't learn how to be a dad, or you don't learn how to be a husband, or you don't learn, how to persevere when the world knocks you down. And a lot of that I learned from athletics. In my case, it was basketball, but I also played some football, and these values have meant a lot to me. And I think these values will be critical to all of us as we go forward.
Now, you've been involved, obviously, in sports for a long time now. And, with Mr. Tagliabue being inducted in this class, the story of his role and 9/11 always comes up, and, how he saw that football was going to be that saving grace that kind of brought everybody back together. In meeting you and talking to you, I've learned that you were actually in New York on 9/11. So can you talk about that experience and how you saw kind of how football brought everybody back together, which, is the goal of after, our pandemic that we're currently in.
I think that's a wonderful story. And during that time, I was living in New York. I was on the 34th floor of a, kind of skyscraper in New York at 842. And I could turn from the television and look downtown, and I could see, couldn't quite see Tower 2 fall over the skyline, but I could see all the debris rise up. And I remember how that great city was paralyzed and how our nation was so stunned. And having worked with the NFL I was commissioner of the Arena Football League at the time, so they were kind of a partner in football. I knew Commissioner Tagliabue, and Roger Goodell was kind of his right-hand guy. And they spent a lot of time agonizing, along with Joe Brown, who's on our advisory board, who was, their kind of chief marketing officer and communications officer at the time, should they play that next week? And again, 9/11 was on a Tuesday. They decided not to play the following Sunday because, frankly, there were more important things than football at the time. But a week later, the following Sunday, when they played again, when the New York Giants went on the field at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, there were 70,000 Kansas City fans with American flags cheering for the Giants. And in every stadium across America, John Bon Jovi sang the national anthem from the fire station overlooking where the World Trade Towers had been. And it was like we were all in a cathedral or a church or a temple, and we were, even if you were at home watching TV, it was like we were all holding hands. And I think our country united, and we started to get our bearings and come to our feet again and started to climb back. And what I always loved is that I think 11 years later, we had a Super Bowl in that same town and never mentioned 9/11. It was a message to the whole world that you can knock us down, but you can't knock us out. Mm-hmm. After that, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of the young men who had joined the military in the aftermath of 9/11. So many of them were high school football players or had played athletics, and they understood what it was to be a part of something that is bigger than themselves. And when you give yourself to something like that, you don't become less relevant, you become more relevant, and that you become a teammate to somebody else. And how do you sacrifice for that teammate? And you get meaning because everybody in that group gets stronger, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I think what Commissioner Tagliabue did during that time, and Joe Brown and the present Commissioner Goodell, was great things. I thought what they did with the draft, which was virtual, but talking all about, even though we're physically distant right now, we're all in this together. Mm-hmm. And we'll get through this. We'll be united. I think America can be very, very strong because I think Americans are strong. But I think those values are going to help us get there.
Yes. So, and we talked about how those values, impact on a huge scale, like, 9/11 or a pandemic or the game itself. But something, especially, being in youth and education, we focus a lot on that next generation. How do those values and playing sports, a game like football, teach those kids and even those adults that play it about life and, how to become a better person, not only, within the X's and O's and on the field, but off the field, as a dad, a brother, a family member, a mom, a sister, whatever it might be?
Yeah, and Jake, great question, because I think that's what we're all about. Sports is really a laboratory for failure. It is a test. It is competition. I mentioned that my mom and dad couldn't read or write, and God bless my mom's heart. In those days, there wasn't an internet, so people sold things door to door, and some guy came by to sell a encyclopedia. And my mom couldn't read or write, but the guy sold her on the fact that if she bought an encyclopedia, that her son could be smarter. And I don't know if that happened, but he did throw in something called The History of Civilization by Will and Ariel Durant. And they had the premise, it was the fall of the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire and the Persian Empire. And it had in there that every great empire was built on competitive values, about how to fight through something, about how to come together, about that don't be afraid of competing. Don't be afraid of losing, because when you lose, you learn more than you do even when you win. But to fight to be better than you are and to drag other people with you. And, to go back to your example of 9/11, shortly after that, I found myself in Walter Reed Hospital. And like the ball that's just behind you to your right or left, I was supposed to go with John Elway and John Bon Jovi, who were two of my owners in the Arena Football League, and at the last moment they couldn't make it. And I'm not a Hall of Famer or a rock star, so we took 25 balls because my signature as commissioner was on the ball. So we gave them a football. And I'll tell you, it was 25 guys. We gave 25 footballs. Most of them had come back from Afghanistan, and they were amputees. And I gave a football on that day to a guy who had no arms. He apologized to me for not being able to take it. It was most humbling moment of my life. But I'll tell you, every one of those guys were competitors. Every one of those guys were fighters. I left that guy. I went to another guy who had lost his right arm at about his shoulder and his right leg at the top of his thigh. And when I gave him the ball, he talked about how much he loved football and how much he learned on his high school team, and about how when it rained, he would go out and meet his buddies at the park for the mud bowl. And when I was through with him, his mother was in a rocking chair, and I said to her, "Thank you for your son's sacrifice for my family." And I said, I kind of added, "I'm sorry." And she put me in my place real quickly. She says, "Oh, you mean this?" And she kind of waved it off. She said, "Don't you worry about this. He's been knocked down before. He knows how to get up." And then she smiled and she said, "I promise that he will." And she said, she added finally, she said, "I don't know if you know, but the fastest man in the world runs on two prosthetic legs at the time." And I think getting up when you get knocked down, not being afraid to fail, but trying to reach out to that next challenge, all of that is what you're taught in sports, and so much more. There's about 90 values that we associate with the game of football, but we focus on the 5 that you have mentioned here. But there's so much more to learn from sports, all team sports. And Jake, I don't mean to take too much time, but 4 years ago, President Trump came by the Hall of Fame. And it was our opportunity to share with him how we think America can be great. Because in our archives, there's information there about how in 1905, there were I think there were 19 deaths in arena football, 170, it's not arena football, college football, I'm sorry. Old habits die hard. 1905, 19 deaths in college football, 179 serious injuries, and college presidents were thinking about eliminating it. And no less than Teddy Roosevelt felt it was important to save football so that young men, and now women who play it, can be tough and rigorous and have discipline and understand teamwork and these values. And so in the halls of the White House, he had meetings where he prevailed upon Paul Daschle, who was kind of the head referee in America at the Naval Academy. And Roosevelt had been Secretary of the Navy before being president, who then prevailed upon the keeper of the rules, Walter Camp at Yale. And they incorporated this thing called the forward pass. And today the game's all about the forward pass. But at that time, it was to make it safer. And it probably saved football. But what was really important was, 35 years later, after they did that, we had Pearl Harbor. And pretty soon there were kids that were 17, 18, 19 years old in the Pacific, in Europe, in Africa, who were defending the free world. And we've come to know them as the greatest generation. But they had a decided advantage because they understood those values and had experienced them by playing all kinds of team athletics.
Yeah, I think, I grew up playing the game, and, I give anything to go, put those shoulder pads back on one time. And it's true, the life lessons you learn playing, especially football, can stick with you, to, your entire life. Want to dive in kind of, you talked a little bit about the Arena League and, kind of your transition from the Arena League to your now career in Canton, Ohio. So when you were with the Arena Football League, had a tremendous growth within the league itself. What was one of the biggest things you saw with your time at the Arena League? And maybe what was the biggest success that you saw when you were the commissioner of that league?
During that time, I think we had a lot of success. The values of the team grew. We went television-wise. We went to NBC for 4 years, and then had Monday Night Football on ESPN. And the number of teams, and we also had a minor league called AF2. But I'll tell you what I was most proud about was after every game. the game would end. It would be hot and fought. I thought it was a tremendous product because fans were so close to the game. You literally touch the game. If a ball went in the stands and a player went into the stands, you got to keep the ball, but you had to kind of throw the player back because we needed him. But women, were so close to the action that they could hear it, and kids could see it, and you could almost taste it. So it was really a wonderful product in a lot of respects for football. It was kind of like half-court basketball. It was quick and fast and high scoring. But the best moment of all, the thing that I'm most proud of, is after fighting hard and fighting against each other, these guys, after the games, they would shake hands. They would go over to the dasherboard to the side of the stands, and they would grab a pen and they would sign autographs after every game. And a lot of these guys who played are still my friends. We've got guys like Jay Gruden, who's been a coach in the NFL, Matt Nagy, who's presently a coach with the Bears. A lot of wonderful guys in the Arena Football League. But I was always impressed that when they were the most tired, the most hurt, they were the most open to the fans. And they were signing autographs and talking to guys. And that was always a proud moment for me.
So now, after your career with the Arena Football League, you eventually, find your way to a decision where you have to leave, nice sunny California and come to this cold place right here in Northeast Ohio, little tiny Canton, Ohio, to be the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So first, what was that decision like for you, personally making that transition, really moving across the country to take a position here?
I've told that story a couple times because I'd had the opportunity to be a mayor and councilman in Irvine and California, and I'd been a lawyer and had been a businessman with some partners that were building an integrated health village, and certainly been commissioner of the Arena Football League. So I had a lot of different experiences. But at the time, I was managing partner of Union Village, which was a 178-acre integrated health village in Henderson, Nevada. And a guy who I consider a friend, but he's the chairman of the sports division at Korn Ferry, an executive search firm, called me one day and said, "Hey, would you be interested in putting your name in as president for the position of president of the Hall of Fame?" And I told him, "Hey, love the Hall. I knew my predecessor, Steve Perry, a great man with super integrity. And I kind of gave it my best Will Ferrell impression that I don't know if you know this, but I'm kind of a big deal, and I've got this big integrated health village here, and we're doing this, and so I can't do it." But he said, "Hey, I'll send you the job description anyways." And he said, "Just take a look at it, and if you change your mind, call me back." And at the end of the day, I was traveling. I was cleaning up my email, so I sent it to my wife, Colleen, and said, "You'll never guess what happened today." And then I erased it. And she called me back and said, about 15 minutes later, she called me back and said, "Hey, we're going to go do this." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, I read this. We're going to go do this." And I said, well, I just told them no. And she said, "Well, you can call them back." And I said, "Well, we've got this big project in Henderson, Nevada." And she said, "Yeah, but you've got good partners. You can pass the baton to them now." And I said, "What about kids and grandkids?" And she said, "Well, we can FaceTime them." and so finally I said, "Why is this so important to you?" And she said, "Have you read this thing?" And I hadn't even read the job description. And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you need to read this because this is what you believe." And she was right. And I have, I don't know whether I'm here another day or another 10 years, but I'll tell you, I've enjoyed the people, I've enjoyed the mission, I've enjoyed the Midwest values of the folks that are here. And I think it's been a wonderful experience because it is what I believe. And in my own life, Jake, I have had many more failures than I have had successes. I think if you look at the resume, it's pretty good, but there's a lot of things I screwed up. And again, how to come back, how to keep going, how to forgive yourself, how to forgive others. Brett Favre. I was in the room when Brett Favre got selected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It took 10 hours to select the enshrinement class on that day. Let me tell you, it took 10 seconds to select Brett Favre. When I knocked upon his door, he knew that I was going to be knocking on his door. I knew I was going to be knocking on his door before I got there, before that day started. But when I knocked on his door, he had enormous humility. He put his hands in his pocket, kind of like a little kid, and kind of hung his head because he knew the shoulders he was standing on. He knew the people who helped him get there. He knew the failures. He's been very outspoken on the fact that he learned more from his failures than he ever did his successes. And this is a quarterback like many of ours who, at the Hall of Fame, who, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he threw more interceptions than anyone else in history. And there's not anyone in the Hall of Fame who didn't miss a block or miss a tackle or fumble a ball or drop a pass or throw an interception. And we have that in our own life all the time. I've certainly had it in mine. And so, I have loved being a part of this wonderful philosophy and message, not just the museum, which is incredible, not just the gold jackets, which are phenomenal, but really this philosophy that these values in sports can help us get up when we get knocked down, when we screw up. We can help give us another chance to keep competing and keep getting better.
I'm glad you brought up that knock on the door. For those of you that don't know, during the Super Bowl week, the Saturday before the game, Mr. Baker has the privilege of announcing not only the entire class, but going door to door and letting them know, hey, you're coming to Canton. It's a great event. I've been lucky enough to be a part of, that moment and just a little piece of it. And it's a very cool event, a very cool moment for these guys. Throughout your time in doing this, and we've only been doing it here now for a handful of years, what is that moment like on your side of the door?
Yeah, I think I've now done it 6 or 7 times because we kind of started a new year right as I got here. But the first time I did it, we were going to do it. We didn't have time. It took too long. We had to get all of our guys who had been brought to the Super Bowl over to the honor show at Madison Square Garden. It was in New York, to be revealed to the nation live on TV. And we called Michael Strahan because he lives in New York and had to get across town first. I then called Derek Brooks because I knew Derek previously and considered him a friend, and his name was on the list. I wanted to call my buddy and tell him he made it. The third person I called was a punter by the name of Ray Guy, who had been eligible for 29 years but not been selected. He almost didn't answer my phone because it was area code 714 instead of 330 for Canton, Ohio. But he did, and he, in his slow Southern Mississippi drawl, he said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "Ray, this is Dave Baker. I'm the president of the new Hall of Fame." And he said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "Ray, it is my great pleasure." And boom, with that, I could hear him fall to the floor. His phone was rattling around. His wife, Sandy, saying, "Sweetheart, honey, baby, are you okay? Are you okay?" And it was like 2 minutes before he got to the phone again. And I thought I'd killed my first Hall of Famer. But when he got back to the phone, Jake, he said, "I'm sorry. I don't think I truly understood until just now how much this means to me." And that kind of started us on this journey of, I get to see that. I got to feel that, even though it was over the phone. What we want is for every fan to have that opportunity to see how much it means to these guys. As you know, we kind of did that with Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher this year for Bill, it was on CBS, his show, and for Jimmy, it was on Fox Sports. But we've also done it for guys like Jerry Kramer, who waited 45 years to get into the Hall of Fame, or Morton Anderson, who came to the United States as an exchange student in the 10th grade, and then went back like 40 years later as the all-time leading scorer in the NFL to Denmark. But there have been so many. Randy Moss is one of my favorites because he got to the door and you could see he was happy, but then you could see in his eyes all the things that happened to them. And again, when this happens to these guys, Kurt Warner from the Arena League, who was one of my guys there, and the incredible journey he made to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But every single one of them, they're all special, they're all unique, and they all have an incredible story. But at that time, Jake, they're not thinking about their trophies or how much money they made or their records. Quite honestly, you can see it in their eyes. They're thinking about their mom that drove them to practice, their dad that wouldn't let them quit, that coach that inspired them. And every one of them has a journey that was challenging, just like ours. And when you see that, when you understand it, you might learn that you might not be a Hall of Fame football player or contributor or coach, but those same values, that same perseverance, that same passion for others can make you a better teacher or preacher or soldier or fireman or police officer or businessman or father or mother. And they can certainly make us a better community. And right now, with the challenges ahead of us, they can certainly make us a better country.
So I think we got some questions coming in here on Facebook, and one of those was related to that knock on the door. Jay, who's one of the top fans of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he asked, who took the longest to come and answer that door for you?
You know what? I'll tell you, the year after, when we were first doing this for the first time in person and knocking on the door, year after Ray Guy, I went and knocked on the door of Jerome Bettis. And I knocked, and I knocked, and I knocked, and finally the maid came to the door. And Jerome had, it took us a long time that day as well, it generally does, and Jerome had gotten impatient. He felt that he didn't make it, which he didn't make it the first couple times, but once you're in, you are in, and you're the best in the world. And he had left. So we had to call him and get him back so I could knock on his door again. I then went to Tim Brown's room, as I recall, and he had moved rooms because he didn't like being by the elevator. And finally, I came to the door of the great Hall of Fame general manager, Ron Wolf, with the Oakland Raiders and the Green Bay Packers. And I knocked on the door, and to my great relief, he answered the door. And he was resplendent with his coat and tie. But he didn't want to wrinkle his pants, so he put his pants folded carefully over his chair. And so I kind of said, congratulations, Ron, I got good news and bad news. I said, the good news is you're going to Canton, Ohio. The bad news, and I turned to the TV cameras, I said, right now you're on TV to all the world without any pants. and to be honest with you, he didn't care. He was so happy to be in, but every single one of them is a really special story.
Now, like you said, you've been at the Hall of Fame for you started in, like you said, in 2014. How many? Remember, every year that adds up to now. I should know I work in youth education, and that's math. But what is one thing that you've learned in your time at the Hall of Fame?
Well, one thing is really hard because I'll tell you, talking about you and people like you, our staff, they are really hardworking people, and they are dedicated people, and they love what they do, and they love this message. And we can, at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we call it the Church of Football, if you know what I mean. And so I've really loved the people I work with. But I would also say, and you know this because we talk about this quite often, we also call it the most inspiring place on earth. That if Walt Disney had the happiest place on earth, we got the most inspiring place on earth. And the reason is because very frequently we get people in who are terminally ill, who are at the end of their life, and it is a big bucket list item for them to go through the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I had a friend who at the time was the number 2 guy at ESPN, and he called me one day and said he's got one of his employees whose dad was terminally ill, and could I get him through the hall? And we let him in for free. We gave him a T-shirt. I went down and had my picture taken with him. We gave him a tour around the deal. But but really it was a kind of the same experience that we give everybody. She wrote me back a letter that said, hey, thanks so much. Your staff was wonderful. The museum was wonderful. But she said, thank you for giving me the best day in my life I'll ever have with my dad. And that has always meant a lot to me. We have had parents come and pour the ashes of their, deceased children over Hall of Fame field. and it's unique when it happens once, but when it happens over and over again, you understand that there's really something special there.
Yeah, so we're kind of winding down here. And the last question I always like to ask it. It's the same one we ask every program that we end. And we've got students, fans, teachers, mom and dad, so many people tuning in on Facebook today. And so, and we've mentioned a lot of great things about the Hall of Fame's values and its mission statement. But what is one piece of advice that you would like to leave all those students, parents, teachers, fans that are tuning in and watching today?
I think it would be faith, family, football, and never give up. We didn't talk about this too much, Jake, but you know that I've got 2 boys in addition to 2 kids on my wife's sides and 10 grandkids. But my 2 boys, I'm 6'9", about 400 pounds, and as you might imagine, my 2 boys are pretty big. And my one son, Ben, who is now a director of broadcasting at NASCAR, he played at Duke and started playing there at a time when they had the greatest consecutive losing streak in the NC2A. My other son, Sam, who had played with the Falcons, as I mentioned, he played at USC where they had the 35-game winning streak. So we had the opportunity to sit down at the table with both kids who had both records, losing and winning, at the same time. But what was really special was both of them were learning these lessons, and they were learning it from great coaches. How to get up when you get knocked down. How do you keep going when you don't think you can go on longer? How can you do that as a team? There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And right now is a time when our country needs to go far, and we need to go together. And I think these values are very important. And when I sometimes I'll leave my office, and sometimes it's like 11 o'clock or midnight because we've got so much going on. And I'll take a moment to walk through that gallery where all the bronze busts are, and it's just me in there. And John Madden says that they talk to each other late at night. I've never experienced that.
Me neither.
But I'll tell you what I have experienced, Jake. Thinking about the thought that every one of them has a story. And what they have in common is they fought valiantly, nobly, to make themselves better, to help others be better, to fight for people that are weaker than them, and to never give up. And that's what we need for right now for America. That's what we need in this next generation. People that will care about people that are different than them, and people that will care about some that are weaker than them. And we need a little bit more forgiveness and understanding in the world, because we're going to screw up all along the way, individually and collectively. But we should never, never, never give up.
I can't think of a better way to wrap up this installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer series, powered by Extreme Networks. And like we said, the first ever special Hall of Fame staff edition. So, Mr. Baker, on behalf of myself, Jerry, Nathan, all of our youth and education team, and everybody at the Hall of Fame, we want to thank you for not only participating today, but everything you've done for us in Canton, Ohio, at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and everything you've done for the game of football itself. Before we let you go, just a couple quick announcements here. All of our fans who are tuning in today, make sure you stay tuned into our Pro Football Hall of Fame social media pages: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're going to be coming out with a lot of great programming. Make sure you tune into our podcast, The Mission, hosted by our coworker, great friend of mine, Mr. Jameer Howerton, who just released a few editions here. We're talking to Anthony Munoz about Joe Burrow and the draft, talking to some of our photo contest winners about the process, about their their winning photos. So make sure you tune in, hit that subscribe button, and give a look and listen to those. Also, we've got some more programs coming up for you guys next week. Next Thursday, on May 7th, we're lucky and privileged to have a new member, a member of the Centennial class, Mr. Jimbo Covert, who will be participating in this Heart of a Hall of Famer program. Next Friday, we're going to have the director of the National Football League's photography, Mr. Ben Leibenberg, to talk to talk a little bit about the photo contest and the process and his career. And then 2 weeks from today, we're going to have who's a special friend to us, Mr. Baker, Mr. Joe Horrigan, who spent a long time at the Hall of Fame. He's going to talk about his career. He recently released a book. He's going to talk about that. He's called the foremost historian in the game of football. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great stories into the history of the game and the Hall of Fame. So before we go, just one last thank you, Mr. Baker. I want to thank you for participating and thank you for connecting in today.
Jake, thank you. Thank Extreme. Thanks to all of our staff members who make the Pro Football Hall of Fame the most inspiring place on earth and make every day a great day at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. God bless, man.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on Facebook for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Heart of a Hall of Famer series, powered by Extreme Networks. We'll see you, everybody.